Degrassi news, and more. This is Degrassi Radio.
Welcome back to the only place on the internet where you might hear, other than Stefan, someone say on tape that Spinner and Emma aren't all that bad as a couple. I'm Gary from DegrassiBlog.com, and welcome to Degrassi Radio. And today we have a little debate going on here. We're talking about the most underrated season of Degrassi. It could be a season that people generally hate, or it could be a season that you don't really see people talking about all that much. Tell me your pick for the most underrated season of Degrassi in the comments section below. Now, I put this question out on Twitter recently, and I received a bunch of really interesting responses to this question, and I'll get to those in just a little bit. However, my pick for the most underrated season of Degrassi, hands down, without a doubt, it's season 13. The short version of why it's underrated for me, it all comes down to 13C and 13D. Those final two blocks of season 13 were absolutely fantastic. We all know what 13A was. I don't have to remind you what that hot mess of a block was. And to be fair, I think there were a couple of factors that happened as well that were out of Degrassi's control that sort of piled on to that whole situation. The broadcast format for season 13, that was a bad idea for 13A and 13B. Just taking away that telenovela really hurt, especially 13A. And there was also, of course, the death of Adam, which Degrassi was just put in a weird spot there to where they were basically forced to write this character off of the show with little notice. Season 13, the most underrated season of Degrassi because the very beginning of the season just left such a bad taste in people's mouths to the point where by the time that we got to 13C and 13D, people had already mentally checked out of the season. Now, on to your picks for the most underrated season of Degrassi. Shout out to Carrie and James, who both picked season 13 as well. Carrie said, "Everyone hates it, but I love it. Don't tell anyone, though." And James said season 13 had brilliant intros of newbies, cancer, death, domestic abuse, sexual assault, profiling, and a lot more. And he also said seasons 11, season 3 of TNG, and season 9 are runners-up as well. We only got one vote for any season from Next Class. Kayla said season 2 of Degrassi Next Class because of the Hunter storyline where he goes into the mental health facility, as well as the racism storyline. And I agree 1,000% that the racism storyline in season 2 of DNC is definitely underrated. As a black man, it was very frustrating to see the amount of people not just confused about what is happening, but just the entire point of the story going over people's heads completely. Like, you see Frankie making all of these excuses, basically not taking responsibility for her actions. And then in real life, you see people who are essentially making excuses for why Frankie shouldn't take responsibility for her actions. It's art imitating life, imitating art. Gloriana says season 1 of The Next Generation because she barely remembers some of the episodes except for Wannabe, Jagged Little Pill, and Under Pressure. And I totally understand that whole thing about not remembering certain seasons because at some point, especially if you're a longtime fan of Degrassi, there's just so many episodes. There are hundreds upon hundreds of episodes. But for me, the season that I can't remember is season 9. Other than one of my favorite episodes of all time, you have Innocent When You Dream, and then of course there's Degrassi Takes Manhattan. But other than that, I don't remember anything else from that season. And speaking of season 9, that is Shane's pick for the most underrated season of Degrassi. He says, quote, "It's still Degrassi light like season 8, but overall one of the more consistent in tone and quality, and it had great music." Nikki's choice was season 11, so good, though it doesn't meet season 10. And then Eric had a really interesting response. He talked about season 2 of The Next Generation as his pick. He says, "I feel like people don't usually talk about any of the plots from that season." And he also says, "I feel like Paige's rape is overshadowed by Darcy's in discussion." And I think both of those are very true. Now, Jared says that season 8, because the show got better once most of the old cast finally went away. Now, I'm not really a fan of season 8, but I do understand what he's saying here. I think it was season 7 where the college kids during that era, that's when they started to overstay their welcome. I think I enjoyed the college episodes in season 6, but then season 7 it was just like, and then in season 8, it was definitely, this doesn't really have a place here in Degrassi. We got a lot of votes for season 7 being the most underrated season, and Alexandria put it best. I like season 7 a lot, but I've noticed it's unpopular. And earlier I mentioned the college episodes being, for me in season 7. Well, Alicia says, pretty sure I'm one of the few people that liked the college episodes. Then Vanapop said season 7, it's the least popular. It's definitely one of my least favorites as a whole, but it contains one of my all-time favorite episodes. And Jamal picked season 7 because he says it's the first time the show really went dark with the themes and look, and I loved the school rivalry plot. It was different. And I agree with Jamal on the look of season 7. It had a very gritty, dark look. And back then, when Teen Nick was known as The Inn, they had the best promo campaign in the history of Degrassi. I know everybody's all about Shark in the Water, how it's so great, it's revolutionary, it's a game changer. I understand that. But those promos that The Inn created for season 7, to me, those are still the gold standard for how you create an actual Degrassi promo. And finally, one more season left to go. These statements are very baffling to me. Jesse says, season 3 of The Next Generation isn't talked about enough. And Degrassi Fandom says, I'd say season 3 of TNG, the love triangle of Craig, Ashley, and Manny was, oh my God. OMG is right, because it is legitimately shocking to me that season 3 of The Next Generation is considered an underrated season of Degrassi. I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. I'm an old man here in Degrassi land. I've been a part of Degrassi's online community since season 3 of The Next Generation was on the air back in 2004. For years, season 3 of TNG was widely regarded as the best season of Degrassi ever. Even just a couple of years ago when season 12 aired. People loved season 12, man. They were talking about how great it was and also how it was the best season of Degrassi since season 3 of TNG. So it's crazy, man. It's crazy hearing that people think that season 3 of The Next Generation is an underrated season. Not saying that they're wrong by thinking that season 3 of TNG is underrated, but I think that speaks more of the times and how they have changed and how the community has changed. Many generations of Degrassi fans have come and gone, and now we're sort of at a phase where we don't really talk about Degrassi all that much anyway. People don't really talk about Next Class all that much. The press doesn't give a crap about Degrassi Next Class unless they get something out of it, like a spoiler, like somebody's having an abortion or something, then they'll talk about it. Other than that, they don't really care. And even the broadcasters nowadays, they can't be bothered to actually promote Degrassi. That's crazy talk. So if people aren't going to talk about the current Degrassi that's on now, why would they talk about The Next Generation? Why would we do that? We should. We should be talking more about Degrassi. We should be talking more about Degrassi Next Class. Less bickering between various factions of stans and more actual debate would be lovely, by the way. But it would also be nice to have discussions about Degrassi The Next Generation as well, because you can't lose. You simply cannot lose by getting people in their throwback feels by posting a picture, posting an update, making a casual reference to, or asking people to talk about their favorite whatever from Degrassi The Next Generation. Some of the top moments in terms of getting attention for Degrassi over the past couple of years have all been TNG related. The Drake reunion. And of course, there was also the Degrassi reunion that happened in season 2 of Next Class. And there was that one time that Degrassi actually got canceled a couple of years ago. There were people that didn't even know that Degrassi was still on the air. But when they saw that Degrassi was canceled, oh man. Remember back in the day watching Degrassi TNG? Let's reminisce on that. That's what they were saying. I don't care what season or generation of Degrassi it is, we got to keep talking about Degrassi, my friends. I understand that promoting the current class or generation or whatever we're going to call it at that time is the priority. However, to me, Degrassi is a brand with a very long and luscious history, lest we not forget. Because just as there's underrated seasons of Degrassi, I would say Degrassi is just as underrated as a show as well. Thank you for joining me here on Degrassi Radio. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think is the most underrated season of Degrassi, and I will catch you next time.